Hey everyone, welcome to the Good Doctor's Diagnose for Wednesday, February 19th. I'm Dr. Kristen, and my thoughts today are to do with presidents. So for anyone who's not in the United States, you probably don't know, but we celebrated what we call President's Day this past Monday. A lot of offices were closed. We celebrate all of the men, the 45 of them that have been presidents. Now, it kind of comes around this time of year because this is when we traditionally celebrate Washington and Lincoln's birthdays, and they're the ones that we think of as like the greatest presidents. But we call it President's Day. The biggest celebration the United States but has with it is that we put a lot of mattresses on sale. It's not really that like big of a day. But when I think about like presidents and therefore we think about leadership, we think about lack of leadership. We think about good presidents and bad presidents. We think about complicated presidents. And for a lot of American history, the person who's been in charge, the public face and in charge of the United States, has had a whole lot of power in the rest of the world. I was born during the Reagan administration. And so my first kind of understanding of a president would have been the first really George H.W. Bush's term in the late 80s, early 90s. Like I remember when Operation Desert Storm and things like that. And then I remember almost all of Clinton's presidency, and was probably a little bit aware as you can be when you're in primary and early secondary school, of things like the impeachment trial. And I certainly learned a lot about what we used to think about Monica Lewinsky and how wrong we were. But my first election, the first time I voted, was in 2000, my first presidential election, I should say. The first time I voted was in 2004. And so since then, I've been trying to pay really close attention, and even before that, because I got super into politics with the West Wing, to presidents and the idea of humanity, and how can someone have this much power and be this important in a space and yet still be a human being. So I've thought a lot about things like the people that you surround yourself with. And I've thought a lot about the checks and balances in our system, even. Like, you know, I have a lot of feelings about the way our country is currently running. But a lot of the people that have power over those things in the Senate and the House of Representatives are not people that I vote for. They're not seats I vote for because they're in other states. And so how do we talk about cabinet and checks and balances and things like that? And what can we learn as leaders of our own little fiefdoms, of our own little spaces? So I've been reading presidential biographies over the last couple of years. Ron Chernow is obviously a really great place to start. You've got Hamilton and Washington. He's done some really fascinating work on President Grant. We here at Abbey Research have been learning and celebrating a whole lot more about the first ladies, because why, in relationships where over 80% of these men had spouses while they were in office, why aren't we talking about their relationships? Because we all know absolutely no human exists in a vacuum. So we have some of the famous ones. We talk about Lady Bird Johnson and Eleanor Roosevelt and Mary Todd Lincoln, and we certainly talk about Martha Washington, but we don't really understand those women in their own right, or that only the impact they would have maybe had on the country, but the impact they maybe would have had on the presidency and the relationships there and intimacy and things like that. So this is long and rambling, which I'm sure you guys have all come to expect from me in my GTTs. But I would encourage you today, in this way of thinking about pop culture, and in not maybe pop culture, although if you want to think about a pop culture president, you could always think about Hamilton and Washington. Clearly, Hamilton wasn't president because, well, he wrote the Reynolds pamphlet. That's really why he was never president. And then Aaron Burr shot him, so that's another reason. But think about era of American history, perhaps if you're an American, or if you are from somewhere else in the world, a leader in your own history that you'd like to know some more about. And take 5 minutes and dig a little further than a Wikipedia. Find if there's a documentary or a really famous book. Discover if there's something that you could learn about them that you haven't thought of before that would maybe shape and shave a little bit more of your opinion about them and help you learn from them, whether in the ways that you want to behave or the ways that you don't. So that's it from us. We'll see you again on Monday. Happy 19th of February. Bye.